go to heaven, the top part of heaven, you have to pay 10% of your income. And at the end of the year, you do this thing called tithing settlement, where you go to that same office, to that same bishop, and he gives you a piece of paper that's like, here's all the tithing you said you paid. Is it a full tithe? Have you actually paid your full tithing? And you say, you look the guy in the eye and you're like, yes, I did. And you sign it. And tithing is so important. What are they doing with the money is the question. And the answer is, well, if they're a church, they're probably building the church and they're probably doing humanitarian work. The Mormons are always doing humanitarian work, right? Yes. And they're not paying taxes on any of that because they're a church, a charity. But by the 1970s, they start using the money for something fairly unique.
There are a number of church leaders who are being drawn from the corporate world to kind of take their expertise. And so you get high-powered CEOs and others who were sort of drafted into church leadership to take it in this new direction.
One leader in particular, N. Eldon Tanner, was a business powerhouse. He's from Canada. He was like an oil tycoon, super good at business, super loyal to the church. I actually grew up with N. Eldon Tanner's descendants. Like his great grandkids were like my closest friends as a kid. I heard a lot about this guy. He was a legend because he came in with all of his business skills and pointed them at the church and said, we are going to turn this into an efficient organization that makes money instead of just spends all the tithing we get. He cut costs, he creates all this financial discipline, and he starts to envision a church that invests that money into stocks and bonds and real estate. And they start doing this.
And he standardized church finances, said, okay, tithing's only going to go to this. And then we're going to take an amount of our profits from that. We're going to hire financial professionals in Wall Street, and they're going to control our trust fund to be able to grow. And we're only going to spend X percentage of our money a year so that we can always have the rainy day fund. So that slowly grows. And those funds, just due to the financial interest and compounded interest by the Reagan era of the 1980s and the neoliberalism of the 1990s, those investments explode and they make the church massively financially wealthy.
The financial growth of the LDS Church from the 70s to today is a mind-blowing thing. I'll give you the highlights. The first highlight is look at this map. I have to say it at some point in the video, right? This is all of the agriculture and commercial and hospitality and industrial and special purpose and retail land that is owned by the Mormon Church. There's huge ranches and farms. But you know what else they're investing in? Me. People like me. I went to BYU, which by the time I went there was like a good university. And 70% of my tuition was subsidized by the church. And this is an investment because we go to BYU, we graduate with these degrees from increasingly prestigious programs like the business or the accounting program. And by then we are in it. We've been through the whole pipeline, all the training, the mission, all of the standardized teaching over and over and over again. The same message. We're devoted. And we will be loyal tithe payers for the rest of our lives. Well, not all of us. Sorry. I was not a good investment for the church. But a lot of people graduate from BYU, go on to make a ton of money, and give a lot of that to the church. The business school at BYU, by the way, is the Marriott School of Business. Yes, that Marriott. He's a Mormon. And it's housed in a building that is named after N. Eldon Tanner. These are the business titans that established the church not just as like a corporate entity in its hierarchy and its look, but also in its finances and its investment strategies, in its corporate structure, in its legal, and it's like they got so sophisticated. And look what happens. It pays off.
Even today, many of the senior church leadership, if not at the 12, at the level of the 70, are drawn from the ranks of very high-powered lawyers and corporate types who can manage the church's vast resources efficiently. They're often not chosen for their theological or doctrinal understanding or even their great public speaking skills. They're often chosen because they happen to be really good at their jobs of kind of managing large organizations.
Like in the last decade, it's estimated that their wealth has grown $100 billion. $100 billion. And over $200 billion of that is just pure hard cash that is in like stocks and bonds. Walmart doesn't have that much money on hand. And they are considered the richest religious organization in the world. If you didn't count like the Catholic Church, which isn't one organization, the church is kind of more centralized. And so on this Wikipedia article, that's why they put them at the top. Anyway, they're incredibly rich for being such a small church. How do they spend their money? Well, we have some decent data on this. Right here at the top, they spend some of their money on humanitarian aid. doing projects around the world. They spend even more on aid that they give to their members, like for members in need, food assistance, things like that. Then they spend about $1 billion on church education. So much of what we talked about in this video is this budget. It is the curriculum, it is the teaching, it is BYU. It's a good investment. This is the stuff that informed my worldview. And then there's this big chunk that is just operating the church, the buildings. There are some paid people, they have to pay them. But look at this. The vast majority of the money they spend is on reinvesting to grow their vast wealth. That's like 65% of all of their expenditures is just reinvesting. I did not know this growing up, and I don't think many did. I don't know, I thought my money was like going to grow the church, build temples, and, humanitarian stuff. I was just like, aren't they doing humanitarian projects? They are, but it's just not that much. And listen, that's actually really rational. The church never said that their mission was to be humanitarian. Their mission is to fulfill the mandate given to Joseph Smith, which is to prepare the world for the second coming of Jesus Christ by spreading the good news of the restoration and giving people the opportunity, dead and alive, to get baptized and do all the rituals. That is their mission. And they believe that they need a giant rainy day fund to do that. And I don't totally know why, like what their plan is, but boy, they've got a lot of money. Now, a few years ago, one of the employees of the investment firm for the church was like uncomfortable with this. He's like a member of the church, believer, and he like comes out and he's like, this is weird that the church has so much money. Specifically, he alleged that there was like $100 billion that was supposed to go to some charitable thing and it wasn't. That ended up not really going anywhere. There wasn't any like fallout there, but it did draw attention to all of this. And the SEC did end up fining the church, discovering that they were using a bunch of shell companies all around the country to hide how much money they had because they didn't want anyone to know that they were sitting on so much cash. And they paid a fine. And since 2019, they have been complying with the right way to file their taxes and pay taxes on the stuff that they have to. So what do the members of the church think about their tithing being used to run a hedge fund? And the answer is, we'll never know because there isn't a culture of debate and dissent. But I can tell you by proxy is if I were a member of the church, I would actually think this is a great thing. I would be like, this is proof that the Lord wants us to succeed. He has blessed us with amazing financial returns. And this is proof. And my church is awesome. And look, we are living the dream and fulfilling the prophecy. That's what I would feel. And I'm sure a lot of people do. And then, of course, there's non-Mormons who are uncomfortable with this idea of a tax-free organization being able to just be a giant investment firm. Curious what you all think. I'm slightly biased in all this. Anyway, the point is it drew a lot of attention to this very image-minded church who since then has started investing a lot in humanitarian, way more than they were before. And we can assume that that is a reaction to this scrutiny.